Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. I'm your co-host, Ted Jenkin, here with my co-host, Lee Heisman. And every single week, we try to bring you some of the brightest and best CEOs and entrepreneurs in and around the city of Atlanta and across the United States. The Shrimp Tank has been growing like wildfire. We're now in some 14 or 15 cities: Columbus, Ohio, Boca Raton, Charleston, South Carolina, Seattle, Washington. When you want to hear the stories of entrepreneurs and you want to develop this combination of book smarts and street smarts, how do you do it? You don't get an MBA. You can pay $100,000, but you're going to pay a lot more when you start your business. But the way that you learn is you've got to hear from bright entrepreneurs who built it on their own. As always, you can get us at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. And highly recommend that you go to our YouTube channel, Shrimp Tank Podcast, where we have thousands and thousands of videos of all sorts of entrepreneurs that we've interviewed. Look, this is, like I said, it's like getting an MBA in entrepreneurship. We're excited today because a lot of business owners that set up a business, they are horrifically when it comes to figuring out not only what kind of credit card to use, but how to basically get more points as they scale their business. And so we're here with Eli Facenda. He is the travel guy. I saw he's a travel addict. He's an entrepreneur, but he has learned how to help entrepreneurs literally do this thing in a very, very significant way in terms of getting points and maximizing it. And Eli, I followed for some years when he first came out. I followed the points guy. And I know that he was the one originally like somewhat popularized this idea of maximizing points. Somebody in my high school actually became the points mom, believe it or not. She's up in Chappaqua, New York.
Nice.
I don't know whether it's a business or it's a hobby, but it's really a fascinating topic. And I'm wondering if you can just start off and talk about, the very high level about maybe choosing a credit card when you're in a business, because if you have employees and you're thinking about scaling up points, those points are money for either perks for your employees or when you're going to travel on your own. Where does somebody start with this stuff?
Yeah, Ted, great question. And thanks for having me on here to be able to share this with you guys and with the audience here, because I think credit card points for most of us, like everyone kind of knows that they exist, right? Maybe you hear about cash back cards, you hear about points, and you're like, so what? I kind of get it, right? Am I doing something? Like, what's there to miss? So I think the first thing you want to start with as a business owner is you want to understand the numbers. That's what we've got to be able to do that. What's the profit and loss? What's the bottom line? And ultimately, what you want to start to see is what's the highest possible return that I could get on every single dollar that's being spent inside of my business. And so it comes down to black and white numbers on that, right? And so when you're thinking about what are the right cards for me, you want to look at a couple of different things. First, you want to look at what are the things that you're purchasing a lot on. They have these everyday expenses, right? There's these different categories that you'll see on, credit card promotions that will be, maximum amount of points for certain types of purchases. So for example, maybe you spend a lot on groceries, or you spend a lot on dining or software or social media ads or travel. You want to figure out what are these top expenses, which cards are going to earn me the highest amount of points on those specific categories of purchases, and then which points are going to get me the most effective value to use, because not all points are equal. So this is a big mistake too, is there's this, each point is really its own currency and they can be used for different things. So that's from a broad level of how you want to start to think about puzzle piecing this together. And we can dive into each of those if we want to. But overall, the highest, most important goal is what's the highest possible return. So I'll give you guys some numbers here just to dive in and give us a little framework. If you have a card like most people do, you're going to earn 1 point per dollar and you're going to get 1 cent per point. So you spend $100, you get $1 back, right? You get 1% back. That's kind of the baseline. Maybe you have a cash back card, you get 2% back on every dollar spent, so you get $2 back. Okay, so that's kind of your baseline. Now, if you have a card that earns 4 points per dollar on this type of purchase, and you can get 3 cents per point out of them by using your points more effectively, you just took something that was getting you 1 to 2% back, and you got 12% back. So, scale that up to maybe $1 million in expenses for a business. That's $120,000 a year that you could be getting back every single year for you, your family, your employees, your team members, in terms of being able to use those points for travel. So it opens up a lot of money savings opportunities. There's a whole tax implication side, but most importantly for me is it gives you the justification and the reasons why you could and should be taking these incredible lifetime experiences, these amazing trips with family, with loved ones, to create memories that are ultimately going to give you a lot of fulfillment. So that's a little bit of an overview of kind of how this whole thing works and how you want to think about it as you jump in, because most of us just have no awareness that any of this really exists.
So I have to admit and interject, Eli. First off, thank you for coming on. And Ted, I'll tell you, we actually have someone that talks faster than us. So let's start there,
Yeah.
which is amazing. It's amazing. I don't feel bad, Eli. You're in Austin, we're in Atlanta, and being the Yankees that we are from Jersey, both Ted and myself, we have to slow it down sometimes. So first off, thank you for setting the pace. Number one. Number two,
Nope, we got one speed.
a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand exactly what you said. They're earning their income, they're earning their money, so they can go take travel with family, enjoy the fruits of their labor. But they actually can double dip here. A little Costanza reference from Seinfeld. They have the ability to double dip. And that's kind of what your company does. And I want to say something as I ask that question is, a lot of people proclaim and give advice and guidance through their business when they actually haven't done it themselves. But if I'm incorrect, 40 countries in 5 years. So you aren't just promoting the systems you use and your expertise, you're actually using it yourself. So you're a byproduct. It's like Cy Sperlington, right? I'm not just the CEO here. I'm also a client.
Also
So
a
Eli,
customer.
Absolutely. If you could talk a little bit about the fact that, people are earning their money, you started to go into that, and I love the variation of points. How do you consult with entrepreneurs? Number one, do you jump in? Do you start to audit their books like an accountant does? And then number two, talk a little about your travels because you have the experience as well.
Totally. Yeah, and I'll start with that. I mean, I just got back from a 3-week crazy trip. I held a 40-person entrepreneur ski trip in the French Alps. After that, we went to the pyramids, went to Doha in Qatar, and then Amsterdam. It was probably like a $40,000 trip. Paid about $1,500 out of pocket for that. So, I am living this, right? And I got into this myself out of passion. There was no intention of starting a business here 7-8 years ago when I started. It was, I just want to travel, and I didn't have enough money at the time. It wasn't like I had a huge business, and I wanted to maximize the money I was spending, and I started to learn it and became a hobby and obsession and now a brand. And today what we're doing is exactly what you mentioned. It's a great analogy. So I think that's awesome that you kind of tied those two together, Lee, which is, it is kind of like accountants for credit cards and for points. So what we'll actually do is we audit every single dollar that's being spent inside of the company, and we'll customize strategies around where you live, how much you're traveling, what you're spending on, the amount you're traveling, or the amount you're spending, and we'll customize the most highest possible return card strategy for you. So that's going to get you, the best possible trips, the best return, also the most enjoyable experience. So getting lounge access, skipping lines in security, getting upgrades, getting free Wi-Fi, getting breakfast, getting suite upgrades, getting more free first class. All those kinds of things are tied in. Getting upgrades when you get a rental car, those kinds of things are all a part of maximizing the experience. But it starts with understanding and dissecting and auditing what expenses we currently have and which cards you currently have, making some tweaks there. And then we also actually help on using the point side, because all the stuff that I'm talking about, it gives you a high level idea of like, yes, this is possible. It's really cool. Most people don't even know that. But once you start to dive in, there's a lot of nuances to this where it doesn't make sense as a business owner for you to be the one learning all of it. It's kind of like taxes in the same example. You should know your overall tax strategy. You probably shouldn't be doing your books. You probably shouldn't be researching the tax code and trying to find loopholes. You talk to someone who's a professional in that, you get the return, but it saves you the time. So we're really similar in that regard. And that's how we work with business owners.
And Eli, real quick, Ted, before you jump in, I have to, for our listeners out there, I said the word audit, and I did not say an audit from the IRS. That's a very contentious audit. I did speak of an audit specifically, Eli, if you notice, from your own accounting firm or a third-party agency that's going to make your business better. And that's ultimately what you do, Eli. It's a self-serving and propelling audit for you to help them, not to criticize how they've currently been doing things.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's a spend analysis, and we'll quantify things. We say, hey, based on your current strategy, you're going to be getting 10,000 back a year. With a couple tweaks like this, and this, you should be getting 40 or 50. We'll analyze everything and quantify it in a way that makes it very black and white.
Well, the good news is, Eli, is that Lee spends a lot of money, so you have a good opportunity to be able to help him. But I think you mentioned just a minute ago, and I think this would be great for our audience, entrepreneurs, to hear that you just took this amazing 2 or 3 week vacation, and you did it, and it only cost you $1,500 out of pocket. And a lot of people maybe ask themselves, well, did Eli spend a lot of money just so he had so many points that he could do this? Mm-hmm. Or did you maximize the points? And I'm wondering if you could share the strategies on how you might at a high level be able to maximize, the points. If I have 1 million points, how do I maximize this thing?
Great question. That's really the key essential difference maker from doing this and getting some value and kind of being there confused and doing it and being like, whoa, that was crazy. And so I'll give you an exact example. So earlier last year, actually, I took a flight over from from JFK, New York to Dubai. Flew first class on Emirates, which is, in my opinion, probably the nicest airline in the world. They have a bar on that flight. They've got Dom Perignon. They've got caviar, like unlimited menu, like truffle ravioli. They got a shower on
No
board.
strippers, no strippers in there. No,
No, not officially, no. But yeah, they got a shower on board. So incredible experience, right? And if you were to fly this and pay cash, it'd be $14,500 ticket one way per person.
Oh.
Very expensive. I would never ever pay that. Now, here's what most people do. Let's say you have 1 million points. Now, generally speaking, most people are going to get these points. Let's say they're American Express points, and they're going to go to Amex Travel, which is called the online travel portal. Okay, now maybe that's what you guys do. If you have your points, you go to Amex Travel, you redeem them, right? So these are technically what's called online travel agencies, and all they're doing is they're an intermediary between your points and buying a ticket. So you cash in your points with them, they go buy the ticket, and you're getting a fixed value on the points you have. Now, the secret here is there's actually other ways to use points where you'll get 2, 5, 10, sometimes 15 to 20x the value. And here's exactly how I did it for that one. I took my Amex points, and instead of using the Amex travel portal, I converted them into Emirates miles. And Emirates actually has a totally different way of pricing flights. So instead of it being, 1.45 million points, which is what Amex travel was going to charge me, it was only 136,000 with Emirates. Okay. So do I have to have, multiple million points to book a trip like that? No, you can see 136,000 points. Anyone can be generating that off of the grocery spend and dining spend they have every month, right?
Eli, hold on one second. What was the conversion rate? What was the conversion rate from that Amex over to the Emirates?
1-to-1.
Oh, that's a 10x, Ted, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge.
So a million, if you have 1.5 million points, scenario A, you're getting around $15,000 or $1,500, or excuse me, 1.5 million points in scenario A gets you $15,000. 1.5 million points in scenario B gets you around $150,000.
Wow. But what about not just the flight itself? What about those experiences, as you said? If I'm incorrect, and again, you have my full attention because Ted, his favorite trip, if I'm incorrect, other than Air Emirates, is I do want to be the tallest person in a country where I land one day. And I'm only 5'10", but Eli's laughing because I think your favorite trip was in Japan. And I'm sorry, maybe that's not the correct thing to say. I'm just simply saying I would hope that I have some presence there.
It's accurate. I'm 5'7", and I got to Japan. I was like, wow, this is very different than being in the Netherlands. I can, see the top everyone says here.
So explain a little bit more about, that does seem what you mentioned, again, your secret sauce. We don't want you to share all your secret sauces, but then what about when you get somewhere? Are you doing the same thing? Are you having to learn Japanese and transfer points to Japanese type of currency?
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things. First off, on the secret sauce, I'm an open book because this stuff, it's out there. It's difficult to do completely on your own unless you want to learn it all. And that's again, the benefit here. So I'm happy to be an open book. If anyone listening to this, has questions after, we'll cover that. But the main thing here is there's a couple of different major hotel brands, for example, and really all the airlines work for this. So you would know beforehand, hey, if I'm going to Japan, I'll probably stay at Marriott's or Hyatt properties, and I can convert my Chase points into Hyatt. I can convert my Amex points into Marriott. In some cases, it might make sense. Other cases, you have to know which points are worth what to make sure that the numbers actually work for you. But that's how you'd plan things out, right? So you're going to stick with a couple of the major brands. That's where the loyalty part kicks in. All these airlines and hotels have a tremendous loyalty programs, and there's a lot of gamification now that you can do to get the top status. So another example, I was in Sardinia, Italy, this amazing island off the coast of Italy, and I had a 4-night hotel stay. It was around 12,000. It was 3,000 euro per night room, so around $12,000 for 4 nights, and it cost me about 135,000 points for that one because I used my Chase points and converted them into Hyatt hotels to book that because it was a Hyatt property. So there's all sorts of ways to do it for hotels. You can also use points for rental cars. It's not really optimal, and the same would go for like excursions and experiences, tours, activities. I don't recommend that. It can be done, but you're going to get a less than optimal value. So really the two things you want to focus on is the two biggest savings opportunities, which is going to be airline flights and hotels.
So Eli, buying things like gift cards or just going to American Express, I know often you can buy things from the Sharper Image or places like that. That's all a bad idea.
Yeah, once you compare it, pretty terrible, especially Amazon. Because Amazon will often give you, depending on the bank you're with, anywhere from like 0.6 of a cent to maybe up to like 0.8 of a cent. Whereas using them for flights, you can oftentimes get 4 or 5x that easily.
So Eli, obviously you're the expert here. And as we wrap up the show a little later, we're going to get people to reach out to you. And I'm telling you, you have my full attention. So I'm reaching out. And for our viewers out there, I know they'll probably be reaching out as well. But run over real quick, everybody, as we talk to successful CEOs and entrepreneurs like yourself, I want to hear some of the mistakes, if I may. So, obviously you created this and you're rattling off you blaze the path, you have the flashlight into the woods, you have the compass, you have the GPS, but you didn't just start like that. Give me some of the potentially catastrophic things you've done, which I bet a lot of our viewers have done, to make everybody feel a little better that you're human and you aren't stepping in the right area all the time.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I made tons of mistakes. When I was first starting, I had no idea. So one of the most common ones is people are getting cards with points that are kind of worthless, right? So if you have Bank of America points or Wells Fargo points and stuff like that, you can't do anything with those. This whole transferring to airlines thing, it doesn't work. So you need to earn the right points. I always recommend starting with Chase, Amex, Citi, or Capital One. Those are going to be the best typically to start with. So when I started out, I don't know why, I decided to get like a Wells Fargo card, a Bank of America card, and then like a Southwest Airlines card. And I don't know, I didn't understand any of it. I was like, oh yeah, points, I can use them for anything, right? And I had no idea. So that's super common. So getting the wrong points is really common. Another misconception is sometimes people assume because certain cards have this kind of prestige around them that they're the best card for them. A really common example is the Amex Platinum, right? People have the Platinum and they're like, well, it's the, $700 a year. It's got to be the best card, right? Because it's the most expensive. Not the case in terms of getting the best possible points and highest return. It's a really good card for the kind of upgrades and experiences in the VIP piece, getting lounge access, getting status at a couple of places. It's great for that. But actually using that when you go out, not great, right? Like if you're going to buy groceries, you actually want the Amex Gold, which is kind of like a junior version of that card. That's going to get you way more points per dollar. So that's another common one. And then the last thing I'll share, this is catastrophic for a lot of people, is they start getting into this. If they don't have a system down, they're not setting up auto pay, they're not tracking things, which are very, very easy things to do. There's a couple kind of steps that we'll just give people. If you don't have those down, you start to have a late payment or something like that. Oof, that's brutal, right? Having your issues to your credit, having that ding on your credit report, it just crushes you. And it's such a funky system. A small mistake like that, while it seems like an easy and small mistake to make, it can have pretty significant and long-term repercussions. So you really want to make sure you've got that stuff tight, and avoiding any sort of issues there is major.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting because this is not a part of people's lives. They analyze a lot, and yet today we're becoming somewhat of a cashless society. Most things are done on a debit card, credit card, or a cash app, which generally gives you nothing, if I'm not mistaken. With business owners, how does it work with you? Could you talk a little bit about the model as a business of what you built? Because there are a lot of coaching programs out there. This one sounds real unique because it has a lot of specifics to just helping people maximize their points. How do you work with CEOs and business? How do you engage them? If they have a partnership, do you engage multiple partners? How does that work?
Really terrific question. I'll start with the second one first, because a lot of people have partnerships and they're like, well, how do we do all this, right? So first thing to know, the points are earned to the individual that's the primary guarantor on the card. Okay, so let's say you guys are business partners, Ted and Lee, and you're 50-50. Well, Ted, if you are the primary guarantor on the cards, all of those points are going to Ted's account. They're not going to like a company account per se, right? So whether it's airline miles, hotel points, all that stuff are going to go to you. So you want to have the right system to move those around. Depending on the bank you're working with, they may be earned to a card or earned to like an individual account. But there's ways to split that up. So we'll work with business owners, whether it's partners or whoever, it doesn't really matter. If there's a high amount of spend, there's a high possibility of return, and you can decide on your own how to split that up, and how you guys want to divide that. We give some ideas and tips on that. So that's piece one. But it's a really important thing. And the other kind of caveat to that is it's actually more optimal to use points for personal trips than it is for business trips, because personal trips are typically an after-tax expense, whereas a business trip would be a write-off, and there's no tax implications for points. So you can earn all these points through your business, use them for personal vacations, no tax implications at all, right? And so that's a really cool benefit of this as well, because normally if it's a $20,000 trip and you pay 25% in taxes, to get the $20,000 to take the trip, you're taking a distribution or some other form of income from your company that you now can just use points to cover that cost instead. So that's number one. And then from working with us, how we kind of engage with clients, a lot of business owners, this sounds cool and it sounds fun. And you start to think about it and you're like, do I really want to deal with headaches? And again, it's similar to accounting in that regard. You should know what's possible. You should have your goal. It's kind of more fun than accounting because you can take awesome trips, but you should know your goals and what's possible and understand the larger system as a whole, like just high level. But from that standpoint, what I always suggest is put your time, energy, and money into the things that matter the most for you, which is probably growing your business, spending time with your family, taking care of your health, those kinds of things. And we will be there to basically be able to audit, create strategies, put together the right game plan for your travel, and then also help with actually using them. So this isn't, we do have courses, but our main thing is not a course. It's not coaching and teaching. It's being there to consult and provide service to you when you need it. And we can go as deep into giving people information as they want. But the majority of the folks out there that we're working with, they're too busy to really dive in and learn this. They want to know the fundamentals and the essentials, and they just want someone to ask, to get help to. They want to get suggestions and ideas, and they want to get support and make sure they're just not doing this wrong. And that's what we're here to be able to help to do.
So Eli, it begs the question. I'm sure it has to be this answer because I'm already thinking of using you in some regard. But, as you said, hand it over to the professional, let the professional put it together, right? I'm sure your clients, when they say, help me figure this out, you're such a concierge service, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a one size fits all. It can't be because you're different, as you said, and for the viewers out there, the different airlines have different ratios and different currency exchanges or point exchanges. So how much are you almost, with respect, and I don't know if I say this word appropriately, but like the concierge travel guide or travel maker for your clients, where to do this, it would almost seem like you'd need to know what their travel requirements or desires are.
Totally. That's a big piece of it, right? Especially for frequent travelers, it's important to know their preferences. And so a lot of people may have an assistant, a virtual assistant, executive assistant, personal assistant. We'll actually plug them into the system as the intermediary because the business owner may not even want to talk to us, right? They might just say, hey, talk to my assistant. They're going to handle it, work through them. And we'll train that assistant on, hey, how do you make travel seamless for the entrepreneur as well? So for the really, super busy frequent traveler that has an assistant, that's a great solution because if it's Saturday night at 11 p.m. and there's a flight change, boom, your assistant can be on it and change you and book you onto a new ticket before you even know there's an issue. Whereas, our team isn't concierge on that level. What we're really great at when we're working with clients is we'll map out, again, the highest possible return for the trips you have. We'll suggest new trip ideas. Some people come to us and say, I got 2 million Amex points. I kind of want to go somewhere amazing with my family. Like, what's possible, right? We're like, okay, cool. Let's start wide. Beaches or mountains, right? Cities or
that's what I meant,
right?
Eli. There's no question.
Yeah.
That seems to be I've got 1 million Amex points. Eli, what do you recommend and how do we get there?
Totally. Yeah. We can start as wide as we want and then narrow it in and say, all right, we go in summer during school break, or are we going in the fall or winter? So we have, our team's been to over 130 countries. So we have a wide array of experience with traveling ourselves, obviously different airlines, aircrafts, hotel brands, the hotels themselves. And so we are custom catering things. And there's actually what's really cool too, is sometimes people don't have 1 million points yet and they want to take a dream trip. Here's a hack for everybody. There's actually ways, this always blows my mind. There's actually ways to buy tickets via purchasing miles or purchasing hotel points that will oftentimes be less than the ticket itself. So you might have a $10,000 first class ticket overseas or business class ticket. You might be able to go online and with the right places to buy it, buy those points for and legally, there's illegal ways to do it too, which I do not suggest, but legally buy those points for like $2,000 and book a ticket that would normally cost $10K. So even with that, we'll advise on how to make that work too.
But is it a retainer model, or do you work hourly, or do you just say swap me out points?
Yeah, it's a retainer model. So there's an upfront piece, and then there's basically a recurring piece for the service too.
Got it. And then you're looking at the points all the time, because one of the things I think a lot of people do with points, and I'd be curious to hear your comments on it, is like, I'm going to save these points for a rainy day. Mm-hmm. But I think I noticed this week that it might have been Marriott, you probably know better than me, was going to change the hotel levels on 300 properties or something like that. And with inflation, aren't those points really just going backwards every year?
That's a great point. Yeah. So there's just kind of a sweet spot. Like it depends on the amount someone's traveling and how quickly they're going to generate new points. Let's say you have a business that's spending $3 million a year, like a solid, significant business. Don't hold on, because you're going to have a lot more really soon. If you spend $10K a month personally and you have a big trip in like a year that you want to take, yeah, it makes sense to hold on to those points and not burn them quickly, right? So it's a little bit different for each person, but you're right. Overall, each point system is going to get devalued over time. It just works like that. And you're really at the discretion of the loyalty program. So I always recommend to people before, if you have like flexible points, like these bank points, before you have a trip, just keep them there. Don't convert them into American Airlines, or don't convert them into United or Marriott until you know you want to use those, because you can't convert them back. And so that's the thing that a lot of people will make a mistake on too, is if they have these points, they'll start to put them into a program and be like, well, shoot, I don't want to fly Virgin Airways next. And then they hold on to these points and they get devalued over time. Or in some cases, they don't use them, they don't touch them at all, and they expire. And you don't want that either. So it is good to save them in some cases, but we oftentimes say, hey, now's the time to go make that trip happen. So go do it.
It's interesting to me because, we're having this, at least while we shoot this one today, there's a potential of another little bank collapse. There's obviously been a lot of people concerned about cryptocurrency, but to me, frequent flyer points were kind of the first cryptocurrency. It's a fiat currency. I mean, because nothing really backs it, right? Per se. Why don't people think about it that way? I just never did understand, Eli, where they're just like, well, the points to them are almost like it's FDIC insurance, like these are my points, but they can go down in value, right? And you're right, they can expire, and there's no reason one day that companies couldn't say, well, these hotel points you earned, they're gone.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the amazing ability that these airline, bank, and hotel programs have in their partnerships to create really good customer loyalty engagement and a really powerful system that gets people hooked, right? Because that's how most people hear about it, is like they feel like loyalty points. And so, I mean, we're playing a game that's inside of the larger bank and hotel airline system. And so if they've designed it, obviously it's designed to get you to want to engage further and stay loyal to their brand. That's the entire reason the whole thing exists, is to drive customer loyalty. And so from that standpoint, I think that's probably why, these changes that happen, Hyatt isn't coming out on their social media and be like, congratulations, everyone, we just devalued our points. It happens kind of like a low key level. And then obviously the bloggers pick it up and stuff like that. So I think people just don't think of it like that because, there's not a lot of publicity around that, other than if you're kind of already tuned into certain outlets that are going to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I used to ask people that in itself, and they're just like, I don't think cryptocurrency is real. And I said, what about your frequent flyer points? I mean, you can't touch them. You don't feel them. They're on a statement, they're not backed by anything. But I saw you do an Instagram post on TSA versus pre-check. Now, I want to know your opinion because I am in Atlanta and I've tried the digital ID as well, although it feels like they just wiped it away. Do you have a vantage point on TSA versus Clear?
I do. And my answer is to have both. Ideally, you want to have both. If you could only have one, I would pick TSA for sure. Generally, Clear is just going to help you skip the line faster, right? So you're still going to get to the security checkpoint, take your shoes off, do that whole thing if you're at an airport where that's required. So TSA allows you to get into a faster line than normal security, and then you don't have to deal with any of the headaches actually going through. But the goal is to have both, because then you can skip the line and have the really fast security. So it's like standard security, TSA, which is faster, and then Clear, which is the fastest. So depending on how funny you're traveling, that's the one you want.
Ted forced me to do that, and I just did my TSA pre-check and the Clear. But Atlanta, as you know, where we're both out of here, is the busiest airport, number one and number two in the world. It pops with China. And I will tell you, there's a lot of value in just running through with my laptop and your shoes. And, there is a big TSA area, Ted, in Atlanta very, very well.
Yeah,
so that there's I have been in smaller airports since I've done that. And although I'm in the regular line, I'm holding a little tag, like an orange tag, like something special. And where they're like, he's the TSA guy. So that's interesting.
Totally. Yeah, I think that savings is the time savings on the bigger airports is good. And the global entry piece is significant too. If you're coming back in the country and you connect, actually coming back into Atlanta, there was a time I flew in from Costa Rica with friends. 3 people didn't make the flight because they didn't have global entry, and the customs line was so long, and a bunch of us had global entry, and it was like literally like a 400 person line versus a 3-person line. So how often are you going to use that in a year? I don't know how much you're traveling overseas, but the times it saves you a lot. And for something that's included as all these things we're talking about, TSA pre-check, Clear, global entry, all sorts of other things, they're already included on a lot of premium cards as a credit. So it's essentially, you're already getting it included. So you might as well just sign up for it, use the card benefit, and you have that stuff when you need it.
I have to ask one before I know we wrap this up, but just for viewers out there, for myself and for viewers, we talk about your big trip to, Dubai or Japan, specifically Japan, because that's my next pop if I can do it. For a bystander saying, I want to use your services, Eli, for me to make a trip with 3 kids, myself and a wife, if I take the wife this time. But the point is, if I had 5 people, I would have to, Eli. Yes. How many points am I going to need, Eli, if I want to say, hey, Eli, I need 2 weeks in Japan and I want it to be extra? I know I'm coming out of pocket for food. I know I'm coming out of pocket for excursions, but my core hotel, flight, and I'll tell you this much, I'm a baby, Eli. I'm going to have to be laying down on a flight. We went to Italy for the first time, and you got to lay in that Delta One, of course, or whatever they offer. What are we looking at? 10 million points? I need 500,000 points. Listeners that want to call you, what kind of points are they needing?
Yeah, great question. We'll work with where people are at. So maybe you say, hey, I got 500,000. What can we do with this? And we'll say, cool. Well, Japan's going to be a difficult one, but like Costa Rica, Mexico, family 5 trip. Let's go to an all-inclusive. Let's get you going there first. That could be easy wins, Caribbean islands, stuff like that. From there, if you were to reverse engineer, each region and distance is going to require different stuff. For Japan, round trip in, let's call it business class, you got a lay flat bed. That's going to cost you around 120 to 130,000 a pop. So you got 5 of you guys. So that's going to be 700,000-800,000. Let's call it rounded up to 900,000 points. Hotels for 2 weeks, if you were going there, let's call it an average of 50,000 a night. That's going to be another several hundred thousand. So if you had like 1.5 to 2 million points, you got a family 5 2-weeker trip to Japan. That's probably going to save you around $60,000-$70,000. So that would be ballpark numbers for that kind of trip. But there's ways to do everything. Depends on also how much you want to hack it versus not. If you're like, it's got to be direct from Atlanta to wherever I'm going versus, hey, we're okay with a stopover in LA, or we're okay with flying out of New York. These things all matter a lot too.
This is great stuff. And I think for any entrepreneur, I guess I want to ask one question, and then we want to give people all your information. If you have employees in your company and your company is growing, is there a way to give some of those points to your employees? There
is. So there's different rules with pooling points. And so you want to make sure you're cognizant around that. I actually have a funny story of how I accidentally broke these rules. Well, someone broke them for me, sent me Hilton points without my permission. And then because it was a part of a scam thing, they actually blocked my Hilton account for a year. They banned it. Got it back since then, but it was like, I didn't do anything wrong, but I got caught up in someone else's weird situation. So you do want to be cognizant of those rules, but overall, you don't have to actually transfer your points to the employee. The best way to do it would be basically, let's say you took your Amex points, you convert them into your own Delta account, and then you book the ticket with your Delta miles for them. So their name's on the reservation, but they're your miles the whole way through. That works great. The same with hotels. So you could book the travel for them. There are ways, if they're employees or business partners or spouses in the family member in the family, that you can actually, depending on the bank, convert your points into their loyalty accounts too. And there's no issues there. But the easiest way, I always tell people, is just use your own loyalty and then just book them on the actual reservation. And sometimes, depending on if it's a hotel, for example, if you have top status, there can be ways where your status can still benefit them too. Like I've got Titanium at Marriott, so upgrades and benefits can still carry over too.
Okay, I learned something. I know before we wrap up, I'm going to go back and watch this. And for our listeners out there, I do recommend going back. Obviously, check us out. If you're listening to us in audio, check out the YouTube. Or if you're doing YouTube, take this in your car if you want to finish it. But I'm going to go back and listen because Eli said something, Ted. And tremendous information, Eli, but I'm going to use this. He said, it was a situation which wasn't my fault, the discussion you were just saying, where I was thrown into the mix of something. I'm going to use that with my wife. I'm going to go back because he said it so smooth, Ted. Whatever it wasn't my fault, but it was a situation that I was thrown into, and I just made the best of it. I forget how he said it, but I'm going to take
I got caught up in someone else's thing. The guys
caught up in someone else.
It wasn't my fault. Yeah.
Eli, I'm using that on a personal note. Sorry. So Eli, how do people get in touch with you? How do they reach out to you to, number one, meet you, utilize your expertise, but then to use your company?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate that. I'm glad we've spilled over into multiple areas of life here. It's fun to talk about more than just travel too. But yeah, so a couple of different ways. Main ways can be Instagram. So it's just at Eli, ELI travel guy. Now, I'll be honest, there's a lot, my account really exploded because the travel content's super fun. It's like, I put a lot of value out there too, in terms of tips and stuff. That's very tactical. It's one of the things I love about this game is like, you don't have to understand everything to get a win with TSA pre-check and clear, right? You can get that like off the bat. But when I was doing that, a lot of fake accounts popped up too. So if you see any scammer accounts out there that are asking about crypto, do not respond. Those are not me. Okay. It's only the one real account, Eli Travel Guy. So that's the best place. And yeah, you can reach out, shoot a message. If you send the word masterclass, we'll send you a free hour-long training that we've put together and all this stuff too. So you're more than welcome to check that out. We've got some free mini courses too. So Instagram would be the best place. And then our website is freedomtravelsystems.com. And again, we've got all sorts of free stuff out there. So if you want to learn more on your own, dive on in. And I encourage you to consider what, a couple of trips could do for you and in terms of creating awesome memories. And that's always our biggest encouragement is, take the money you're already spending, create lifetime memories and have experiences that you otherwise probably wouldn't quite justify. So that's the main message.
Hey, well, this is great stuff. And for entrepreneurs out there, listen, these are things you normally do not think about when you're running your day-to-day business. You're thinking about driving top line revenue, hiring and retaining talent, trying to drive the EBITDA in your business. But all those points add up, and you want to get the most out of them, go to Eli the Travel Guy. That's where you're going to get your information. This is great stuff today. Thank you for sharing it with our audience. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure Lee and I will figure out how to become customers, and you can help us figure out what to do with our millions of points, because we would blow them anyway. So we'll make sure we get with you. And thanks so much, everybody. Stay tuned. We continue to interview small business owners and CEOs and superstars across the country. Continue to turn into the Shrimp Tank. This is where you're going to get great information to help you maximize everything that you're doing in your business. And we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp